Welcome to this Text World Conference. I'm Louis Gérin, one of the art director of the show, and Grégory Lameau here is the other one. I'm in to my left. Well, I really want to welcome you to this event, and without any more ado, we are going to discover the re-enchanted trends for the autumn-winter season 2020-2021. Well, one of the specificities is that those trend tables are made twice a year by stylists, designers, psychologists, authors, and so on and so forth. We sit together and twice a year we observe the changes in our society. We decipher the micro signals of our society that will influence the consumption and that will make the market, that will give the impetus to the market in the months to come. One specificity too with the trends today, they all are entitled from 18 months to 18 months. So we've got inspiration for winter and autumn and winter 2020 and 2021. Well, of course, we find that the globalization, the very fast globalization of the information, the fast data makes it possible for us to find on the market all those trends, not in 6 months' time from now, but in 3 months by and large. New technologies today make it possible to have printing, fabrications that make it possible to meet immediately the request from the market, and we'll see those trends invading the market, and in 3 months they will develop. So 9 months later they will continue prevailing until summer, spring and summer 2021. So we see some kind of overlapping of the seasons and the various influences throughout the seasons. So this is for the introduction. Now we are going to tackle the real subject. We are going to talk about this re-enchantment. This conference is going to be held in two steps. Firstly, we are going to study the 8 micro signals of our society, the 8 points of interest that the creators and the consumers of the whole society will have in the 6 to 18 next month. Fury, combustion, indigestion, polychromy, Atlantis, stature, edification, and confines. And we'll see in a second step how those micro signals of the design, those micro signs of concern will mix up together, will interact the one with the others to create tomorrow's aesthetics, to create the trends and the aesthetic innovations and the ranges of colors that will bring us to autumn and summer and winter, 2021. I'm going to read the introduction and then we'll consider those micro signals. We were very keen of seeing tomorrow, but winter is lasting. It is true to say that we have been asked to slow down our course. We can cure the epoch, but this is not true. I mean, we've got to redo everything. We've got to change the pace, whatever the destination. In the spirits and on Earth, climate is warming. It is made of a protest. At the foot of the wall, it's a movement of hope which invades the world. So let us admire this present, which is already yesterday. There is no plaster, no adjustment, no touch-up to be made. We must not regret this world. We must embrace the future, which is our present at the moment. Well, we are rediscovering the joy of believing in tomorrow without any frontier, without any limit. Our planet is our arch. We want to explore our world. We want to look at an unknown horizon, and it is this spirit of re-enchantment, this global spirit, which is going to go throughout the society. An awareness which will be very deep, a visceral awareness which will embrace the whole population and make it aware that we've got to change our way of life. We don't want to rebuild on yesterday's mistakes. We have to rebuild something new and reconsider all those schemes. We are going to see that in several micro signals. The first one is this people's fury, which has been expressed largely. It goes on expressing itself. You know, in Frankfurt, for example, we have popular protests, the yellow vests protest in Paris, you know, which is a symptom of this fury of the population, this opposition, this desire of giving up a system, giving up a dictator of the elites that the population refuses today. This is shown in many works of art. We are going to see many reports that have been made in Paris of all those window displays that have been broken, you know, all those protest messages that we see on the walls. I mean, the street art, the tags reflect this protest. We'll see all this movement, which is going to be the refusal of virtuality, the refusal of this blinding virtuality, the presence, the refusal of the dictator of the social networks. Well, these are things that the consumers are going to refuse more and more. This fury, this anger concerning those topics or those subjects, concerning the power of the elites, the omnipresent virtuality of our world, and to this recycled rejection will add this desire of, refusing all those polluting modes of ultra consumption, this permanent waste that is operated in this society and that destroys the world which surrounds us. This fury will really motivate the troops this season, motivate the population and the consumers. We say the consumers, but we are talking about human beings, you know. So this is what is going to motivate us and motivate us to develop a new vision for tomorrow. Now, this fury is expressed in different manners. You know, I've talked about this rejection of the plastic, this interest for recycling, the reutilization of our waste. This is something we systematically find since several seasons. There will be a wish to burn everything. That is what I call the combustion. This combustion is a metaphor. We are talking about the climate heating, we are warming, we are going about this spirit of anger which penetrates gradually the aesthetics in very strong images of combustion of products that are incandescent, fury, flashes, flash of lightnings. This shows this spirit of incandescence and fury and rebellion, revolt. With this carbon gift, this frozen spark, all those aspects that are really burnt. Then next to that, I mean, after this fury, after this anger, after this feeling for burning and destroying everything, I mean, this new trend is shown in this rejection of food too. You know, that's the theme that I have called indigestion. It regroups all those works of art that show this consumption society which destroys the planet. How from a natural element, food, corn, cereals, fruits, how has it been possible to make sure to make the nature destroying itself in this consumption? Why did we push our consumption to outside the natural limits? The consumption trends, I mean, with plastics that can be disposed of. In France we have promulgated new laws consisting in prohibiting the utilization of plastic bags, for example, with a single usage, such as straws, and plastic in the retail sector. we promote in situ consumption and the use of real crockery rather than plastic plates and so on and so forth. So we want to completely reconsider our habits to have a new vision of the future. So this indigestion and this food problem is at the core of the consumer's motivation, and it motivates the global economy. This idea of indigestion is going to be found in the fashion trends too, in our spirits, in our minds, in this parallel between fast food, wrong feeding, and the awareness of it. Around us, we talk a lot about wastes. I mean, things that surrounds us. I mean, we have seen this indigestion with very interesting works of art, such as the one of John Dillow, Bad Apples, showing rotten apples. You know, we are going to talk about this rotting process. This polychromy is going to concentrate on this idea of the omnipresent color, which doesn't allow this plastic matter that surround us and that choke our planet at the moment to be accepted. At the moment we are sending those plastic to Indonesia, as in China doesn't want it any longer. So this Indonesia country is completely choked by this plastic. Landscapes are sacrificed. So this polychromy, these colors, this melting of the plastic matter, that is what we'll find in the colored spirits of the season. We are going also to see how this plastic may melt and proliferate, and mix with other substances. There will be gradient aesthetics appearing where colors are just like melted plastics that would have, or molten plastics that would have been exposed to high temperature, exactly as if we had wanted to make everything melting around us. But unfortunately, this is something that we can't avoid. I mean, being overwhelmed by those plastics, and we have to do with it for many years again. So how we can't avoid recycling, and therefore we are starting appropriating this vision. As Lewis Carroll says in this quoting from Alice in Wonderland, well, if the world has absolutely no sense, who's stopping us from inventing another one? Who prevents us to give to those wastes and those refusals? What prevents us from magnifying this poison that we have created ourselves? This is the question which prevails, and therefore we wonder, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? What will be the consequences of this invading plastic which invades ocean? We're talking about climate warming. There is this idea of increase of the water levels, this popular fury, this idea of flow and a wave of protesting spirits, which looks like a sea that would be angry, and what that would remind us about this idea of the necessity of a better world. So in this image of the Atlantis, we will find during the season a lot of images inspired by water. The glaciers, I mean the melting of the ice, the awareness of the raising of the water level, sea level. Many works of art of contemporaneous artists will reflect this consideration, and I invite you to explore those references that you can see in the book, to go in depth into those art messages. In the works of art, we will find a lot of allusions to the flow of cascades, the tiding flow, and so on and so forth. So this flow of protest will be siding with this, and this will also side with the awareness of the beauty of our world. And this idea of contemplation of the oceans and the submarine landscapes, landscapes that we have not, or spaces that we have not yet explored, but we know that they are magnificent, but already damaged by man. So this is what we are going to put under the eyes of the consumers, and that we are going to push to the extreme. We are going to make it almost supernatural, something that will magnify the elements in presence and the nature around us, but still developing this awareness of the necessity of conservation, this awareness of the necessity of changing our habits and our approaches to the elements. So those ideas, I mean, make us grow. And it is interesting to see that during the season we are going to find what we have called this idea of stature. Stature that we have illustrated with a quotation of an intellectual person, Martin Luther King. And whenever men and women straighten their backs up, they are going somewhere, because a man can't ride your back unless it's bent. So this is this symbolic of the totem, of the column, of the elevation that we'll find also very much during this season. This idea of stature will be asserted. We are going to become aware of our mistakes and accept them. So this idea of twisted elevation or contemporaneous totems is what we are going to find all through the season as reminders of the past. We'll find those codes of the antique, the Doric temples, the antique purity, which will be projected into the future. We'll find those twisted structures visualized in a modern way, as if we were looking at it through the prism of our civilization. And we'll find a lot of works of art, such as the Marcellus series of totems, those brilliant and twinkling totems that push upwards. And this is what we are going to observe in this theme of stature. This idea, it is an idea which is very positive, which accompanies this reenchantment, and which supports this movement of redefinition of our habits and the way and our way of living. We must not be ashamed of our past mistakes. This is what this theme of stature tells us. We must, keep straight and move on. So let us start standing up and think in a positive manner. We start rebuilding the world around us, because of course we are not inactive. We want to re-enchant the world. We are talking about today. We are not going about tomorrow, 6 months time, or 1 year from now. We want to act immediately. The urgency is there. We have seen the fury, the combustion, the water level raising. So we've got to find remedies to all that, and we have to start constructing tomorrow without the mistakes of the past. In the past seasons, we have had a lot of aesthetics that were building up on ruins. Now we are going to continue into this edification or construction idea. We'll see a lot of very light constructions, things that can be removed, that can be changed, that, exactly like this station here, something wide open, which makes it possible for us to see around us the space and redefine the space around us. This infinite space and the interpenetration of the space. There is no inside, no outside. That is the idea of an urban interface. This is the idea of re-giving some life to this inertia that was prevailing in the concrete structures that we have developed around us. So today we want to make this urban context more changing, more flexible. We can't work in a forest. We can't live, in a forest, of course. But we are going to find some kind of interference between the city and the outside landscape. We want to have an interaction of a much more organic, a much more natural intervention or interaction with the city, even though we don't build this city ourselves. So this is this organic urbanity that we want to develop and we want to stick to something which is moving, which is positive, which goes upwards, and that does not reiterate the mistakes of the past. This is something which systematically comes back. In this edification, in this idea of growing, selecting a better world and not reproducing our mistakes, you know, in this world of fury, we heard about a lot of things. I mean, we have no alternate planet to live in. So that is precisely why we have to reenchant the world, change our habits before everything explodes. So what could inspire us, what could motivate us? Well, the idea was to move to the cosmos, you know, to the space, but, you know, we had to give that up. What is interesting to see is that the universe and the confines of the infinite and the outer space continues to inspire us. It regroups the poetry of our being because it sends us to the infinite, to the unknown world, something very poetic. You know, it takes us to the confines of our sky. This is something that prevails in the religions, of course, but we have a very poetic spirit of the contemplation of nature, the clouds, and so on and so forth. This year there will be the 50th or 70th anniversary of the first man on the moon. We have missions to rediscover the moon. I mean, China, I can't see any Chinese here, but China has recently endeavored to make us rediscover the hidden face of the moon. NASA is already planning to go back to the moon. In the first picture that you have right in the middle, that is an observation, a scientific observation that was made on the surface of Mars. And it was discovered a blue sand dune. This is exactly the color we can see. It's exactly like a Saharan dune, but in blue. And this inspires the creators today. And I guess that it would stimulate you too. This idea of an imaginary world, this idea of a world of the future, a faraway world. Now this idea of ideal world, I mean faraway world, which does not exist, all this science fiction, well, this will be shown in the movies. You know, there will be a lot of movies dealing with the intersideral travels and discovery of new worlds. This will prevail this season. This cosmic discovery, I mean cosmic in the scientific meaning of the term, the scientific observation of this immensity which surrounds us and which makes us aware of the fact that we are nothing. We are nothing, and if we don't do anything, we'll be nothing in the future. And it also will make us discover that there is no alternate planet to live in. And this, you know, nurture our imaginary. This is the idea of confines, this idea of going and discover a new world and re-enchant it. So we have just seen now, we have just covered, and I invite you to reconsider that when you have the time to do so. We have seen all those signals and all those points of interest, and I invite you to be inspired by those ideas. Now we're going to see how those signals, those points of interest, those problems, you know, entangled and mix up, and we'll see that in the four trend themes of aesthetics and fascination: the apocalyptic fascination, the memorial spell, the synthetic dazzle, and the astral ecstasy.
So let's start with this apocalyptic fascination. So this theme tells us a lot about us, about human beings. It tells us about this deep awareness that we're getting about the climate. It's all about warm and cold colors. You can see deep sky blue, ocean blue, artificial blues as well. Also, you have here the aqueous reflections that give this very, very, very vivid, very bright turquoise. And they all stand in opposition to this whole range of red colors, which are darker, so which are representative of rising temperatures, of this rising fury within ourselves. So this is a mix of cold and hot. So it's a very positive vision, but at the same time, it's quite a pragmatic look on tomorrow's apocalypse. It's the vision of the millennials generation, of digital natives. It's the vision of this pop culture. So there's a deep awareness here of the threats against nature. And also, well, we've seen earlier on the blue sand of Mars. So it's always this idea of a magnificent world, but there's still this idea of consumerism. So it's a range of colors that encompasses lots of things about our society, but which also is about taking our society further. So lots of blue colors, the fury, the rise in water, but also hot and cold. And so in terms of textiles, because this is what we're interested in, I'm really coming to brass tacks, of course, don't worry. So all this is going to lead to different ideas, such as, for example, binary weft, recreational weightlessness, and contemporary diversity. A lot of mixes in technical materials that become softer. It's like these reflective materials that you can see on this first picture. It's really going to influence ready-to-wear. So this technical taste is going really to influence ready-to-wear to fight climate change, but also the rise in water levels. So there's a growing awareness today that fashion is no longer only decorative. It never was only decorative, but today it's changing. You probably remember the trend that emerged a few years ago. Well, it's exactly the same idea, the technical, functional, convenient fashion. Also, lots of classics are going to be revisited. Classical colors, that's here what we call manhandled geometry. You can see here all these bright and glistening reflections, vinyl, plastification. It's a really hot and cold colors with a lot of contrast that create a lot of, well, something really attractive. So we have many different things here: revealed uniqueness, disturbing evolution, universal radiography, all things that you can see in transparent fabrics, for example. A lot of reflections as well. Things that really penetrate materials to make them more futuristic. So the spirit, the idea with this apocalyptic fascination is really the technical and technological transformation of our society towards something entirely digital, with, however, this idea of being closer to nature. We don't want to repeat past mistakes. So really there's a growing awareness of the need to protect our planet. The second aspect is this immemorial spell. And it's going to bring us back to our roots. So it's something which is more culture-oriented. It's more historic. It's all about our memories. It's a bit like a fairy tale. They had well, they were married. Then they married and had children, and the princess loved in a field of flowers, and so on and so forth. So it's basically the adaptation of the fairy tale, but into today's reality. So we have a lot of things we're here with urban interfaces, columns, as you can see, a lot of current influences, like the top right work of art by Raphael Zarka, which was presented at the Contemporary Art Show, the FIAC, in 2018. Skate ramps on Bridge Alexander III, but also Ventris, a work which was presented in New York. So it's very urban, but here artists are trying to look for something precious, and so they want to cover the present with something vintage. So we have a lot of things here, for example, the recycling of natural materials, tapestry, a lot of tapestry, a lot of quilting, corduroy as well. A lot of influence from the 1970s, the carelessness of the time, but all covered with this vintage spirit. So you can see it's a very, very special palette of colors here. It's like it's sort of like a medley. It's a medley of the flowers you could find in the garden of the princess in a fairy tale. But it's the colors of withering flowers here. So it's really something that that conjure up the elements of our civilization. So we have junk food here, for example. It's really something that has a real urban spirit, but also there's a longing for the ancient roots of our civilization. Something that can help us enter the future. So I've talked about something which is really vintage, like with 70s colors or inspirations. Also here we have something in cork. You can see this carpet made of cork with neoprene, but with really a vintage and natural look. It's this worn, passé look, something that you can also see in the geometrical shapes. Lots of quilting. It's something really reassuring. A lot of soft, natural fibers, but also the use of synthetic fibers, of natural fibers, to create something synthetic. Basically, creators here try to stop time. Also, a lot of the dimensions here. So things that really, so mineral matter, and many other things. The fourth aesthetic trend of this season is this synthetic dazzle. This is a blunt criticism of our society, of our consumption patterns. So it's a criticism of our constant consumption of plastics, which are now a problem. But also in this trend, people try to really highlight human genius. So mankind has now understood that it is a mistake to to consume endlessly on a finite planet. We have awakened to this, but we are also aware that humankind had some genius to create all this, polymers, dyes, to create all this. There's some genius in the human spirit. So there's a fascination for this. But now, as we heard earlier on, we need to stand upright. And actually, if you look at this totem, we have to do the same. We have to be proud of our discoveries, of our technological advances, but we need to remain aware that this development is destroying the future. So we're a bit like a rabbit in the light of a car's lamps. We are dazzled. So it's something which is synthetic but natural at the same time, because we should not forget that the colors come from nature, and actually we should also bear in mind that the brightest colors are those which are the most aggressive in nature. Insects use these colors to attract their prey. Flowers do the same to attract insects. And they do the same to start the reproductive process. And this is what we're looking at here. These bright colors. And for example, we have this example of this exploding willow bin here. So it's about the attraction towards these synthetic colors, like animals. So it's really actually a primary function which is highlighted here. So really vivid colors that come from nature, which are reminiscent of the springtime, but it's all digitalized. So as we've seen, it's a synthetic range. We are dazzled by the surrounding world, but also by the genius of the human creative spirit. So lots of classics are reinvented here by mixing this plastic aspect, a lot of deep green, a lot of references to nature, but also to the submarine, the underwater world, with a lot of bright, vivid colors that attract the human eye, but it's very positive. So the idea here is to wear the colors of these past mistakes, and all these grandiose creations will dazzle us. So at the end of the day, it is a homage, a tribute to this natural environment that actually we've just copied. Well, I'm not talking about us here, but I'm talking about humankind. We have drawn inspiration from these synthetic and bright colors. It's all inspired from nature, but we realized this only recently. Now let's look at the last trend, this astral ecstasy. So it's a desire for modernity. So it's very urban. It's very mineral. So it's about the combustion of oil, of natural resources that we use currently. But also glass is a very important part of this trend. So the fusion of silica, basically the fusion of natural elements that are then turned into glass, but also the use of incandescent colors. So it's all about brutality here. So you can see we have different themes and colors, threatening atmosphere, radiant ruby, purple world, and so on. And so there's a parallel here between our consumer society, which mainly is to be found in urban environments. So the parallel between this and some many colors. So it's all very digital, but also this trend is about memories. So you can see here many inspirations from ancient times, wrinkled fabrics, lurex as well, a lot of glistening fabric, a lot of silvery golden threads, reflecting surfaces, glistening surfaces, sequins, moire surfaces. So we can see here urban landscapes which are re-enchanted with light. So it's inspired from a lot of technical products. So I've just talked about the glistening aspect of it all. And so this trend really gives a great, or attaches great importance to our know-how, to our craft. But it's also about our ability to move into the future. So you can see here lots of crafted materials, rich materials, which combine the urban and futuristic aspects. So have a look at the main trend forum, where you can see all these materials. It's all the way there in Hall 3. It's a 20 minutes walk. No, I'm joking, but it's actually quite a walk from here. So you can find out more about all these materials in the main hall. And now, so this is the main range of colors for the season. So star colors, the Reenchanted range. And again, it's reminiscent of our primary instincts: blue, green, red. It's a primary light spectrum. So this is going to guide us throughout the season. We want to reenchant the world. We want to reenchant today's society. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for your attention and for attending this conference. So please really make sure you grab a copy of the trend book, have a read, and you'll see there are many, many interesting artists inside. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.